Subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Thank you for being here. Where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments so I can shout you out in the next episode. The cabin lights flickered as the plane crossed a dark ocean. A baby's cry shot through first class like a fire alarm. A man in a gray suit stood up, sweating, rocking a tiny girl who had gone from loud to breathless. "Please," he said, voice cracking, "somebody help my daughter." The baby's lips looked too pale. A flight attendant rushed over with a small oxygen mask, but the baby pushed it away and wailed again, her chest heaving, then hitching, then not moving right. Phones went up. People whispered, "Make it stop." At the thin curtain between first class and economy, a skinny 17-year-old boy unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped into the aisle. He stared at the baby like he knew her. He whispered something to himself and moved toward the curtain. A crew member held out a hand. "Sir, please return to your seat." The boy looked past her to the baby, took a breath and said, calm but firm, "I can help." The man in the suit turned, eyes red and wild. "You?" he snapped. "Sit down." The boy didn't. He lifted his hands, empty and open, and took one more step. The jet shuddered, the seatbelt sign dinged, and every head turned as the baby let out a thin, broken sound, then no sound at all. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. And hit subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Hours earlier, the same boy, Caleb Brooks, stood at gate B12 with a backpack that had one working zipper. He hugged his mom so tight she laughed and said, "Boy, let me breathe." The airport windows were bright with morning sun, but their reflections looked tired. "Text me when you land," his mom Renee said. "And eat the sandwiches. Don't act brand new because you're flying over water." He smiled. "Yes, ma'am." He tried to hide the truth that his stomach was a knot and his ticket was the cheapest one the system could spit out. He wasn't going to London for fun. He was going for a chess tournament that could change everything if he didn't mess it up. Top teens from everywhere. Sponsors watching. A chance at a scholarship, a coach, maybe a door that finally opened. He had studied nights in a library that closed too early and at a laundromat that never closed at all. He had slept on strategy books like they were pillows. He knew he didn't look like the kids in the glossy flyers. No blazer, no fancy headphones, no silver carry-on, just a thrift store hoodie and a heart that kept telling him, "You've got to move left." At the gate, a little boy was screaming because his mother wouldn't buy him a giant candy bar. Caleb smiled at that sound. It was loud, yes, but it was healthy. He was used to crying. When his baby sister was born, the apartment walls were thin, and so were their nerves. Their mom worked double shifts and taught him how to hold a crying baby like a question you could answer if you listened right. "Hands under, head safe," she'd say. "Rock slow, not fast. Babies don't like storms. They like waves." She taught him to hum at a low pitch, not high because low sounds sometimes calm small hearts. To keep his own breathing steady because babies copy what they feel on your chest. To check for tiny things that pinch, scratchy tags, tight socks, an ear folded wrong against a shoulder that he could sense a real cry from a tired cry, a hunger cry from a "I just need to be held" cry. He had no certification, no badge. He had something else, practice and love. They called his group. He hugged his mom again. "You're brave," she said in his ear. "And you're going to see the ocean from the sky." He grinned like a kid and then tried to be a man. "I'll make you proud." "You already do." She pressed a small plastic chess knight into his palm. It was from an old set with 2 missing pawns. "For luck," she said. He slipped it in his pocket and boarded with a crowd of strangers holding passports and paper cups. The plane smelled like coffee, cotton, and fuel. First class glowed like a quiet hotel, all soft blankets and wide screens. A tall man with clean shoes and a square jaw sat in the first row with a baby girl in a pink hat. He looked like a person who was used to solving problems by throwing money at them, and like a person who didn't know what to do with a problem that wouldn't take cash. His name was Grant Cole, a self-made millionaire who hadn't had a day off in years, not really. He had built a company that everybody used but nobody understood. He had meetings that never fit inside normal hours, and he had a daughter who didn't care about his calendar. The baby Lily was 6 months old, new and loud, with a tiny birthmark by her ear. Grant was flying across the ocean for a deal that could push his company into a higher sky. He had promised himself he could handle both things, the child and the deal. He thought, it's logistics, it's timing. It's only a few hours in the air. He thought wrong. Caleb's seat was near the back, by the wing that hummed like a big, steady animal. His roommate, a woman with a knit hat and kind eyes, asked if he was nervous. "About the ocean or the tournament?" he said. She laughed. "Either." "Both," he said, and they both smiled like they were on the same team for a second. He pulled out a beat-up notebook. On the first page he had written, "Open with E4. Be yourself." He traced the letters and felt his shoulders drop. The engines deepened. The plane rolled. A baby squealed up front, a bright, quick sound. Somebody said, "Ah." Take off. They climbed into sky. The city shrank to a toy set. Clouds gathered like a white roof, and then it was blue for miles. Drink carts rattled. Babies rarely cried all the time, he knew. Most of the time it passed. But some cries built like storms. 2 hours in, a sharp, tired cry started up front. It rose and fell, then rose again. It turned faces. It put lines on foreheads. Caleb looked at his watch, not because of time but because he liked the steady click. He tried to go back to his notebook. The cry kept pulling at the edge of his mind like a thread. In first class, Grant stood again. He tried milk, a pacifier, a walk up the aisle. He bounced gently, then harder. He changed Lily's diaper in the tiny bathroom while elbows hit the wall and he nearly dropped the wipes. Still she cried, a wide-open cry that ignored his money, his title, his careful schedule. Sweat soaked his collar. He checked her forehead, warm but not hot. He checked her fingers and toes, pink. He tried a tiny rocking rhythm. She would calm for 3 seconds, then stiffen and scream harder like she was saying, "No, you're not hearing me." He pressed the call button. A flight attendant named Dana came quickly. "Let me grab an infant mask," she said. "We can give her a little oxygen." For a minute it seemed to help. Then Lily arched her back and cried like something hurt deep inside. The man across the aisle cleared his throat. "Sir," he said, tight smile, "maybe take her to the galley?" Another woman, "I paid for this seat." Someone else, "Can't you control your child?" The words were small darts. They stuck. Grant's jaw tightened. He looked at his daughter and then at the people watching like judges. He wanted to say, "I can build companies. I can fix budgets. I can hire your boss. I can do 100 hard things. But I can't make my child stop hurting." He wanted to say, "Please be kind." He said nothing. He kept bouncing. In the back, Caleb closed his notebook and listened the way his mom had taught him. Not with his ears only, but with his chest. He heard the start-stop pattern that sometimes meant air wasn't moving right. He heard the tiny gasp between cries, and it bothered him more than the loud sound itself. He remembered his sister's first winter, when her nose got so stuffy that milk wouldn't go down, and she would cry harder because she couldn't breathe and eat at the same time. Renee had shown him a trick with steam, another with upright feeding, and a small routine he still did without thinking. Shift the angle, open the airway, let the baby feel a slow, steady breath against her cheek so she matched it. He looked at the seatbelt sign. It was off. He stood in the aisle, then sat again. He was just a kid from the south side with a tournament flyer and a sandwich wrapped in foil. He was not a doctor. He swallowed. The cry sharpened, climbed, and then cut off like a radio snapped shut. That silence was wrong. He pressed the call button. When Dana reached his row, he pointed toward the front. "That baby," he said. "I know a way that might help. My mom taught me. We had a real fussy one at home. I can show the dad." Dana looked at him, at his hoodie, at his clear eyes. Her training said safety first, chain of command. Her heart said try. "Wait here," she said. She moved up the aisle and slipped through the curtain. A minute later she came back, face tight. "He's not open to help," she said. "He asked for space. We're monitoring." The plane felt smaller. The air heavier. The baby cried again, a thin saw blade of sound, then made a soft coughing noise that made Dana change color. "I'll check again," she said and hurried away. Grant's hands were shaking. He had never felt this powerless. He tried to remember what Lily's pediatrician said about flights. He could barely hear his own thoughts over the angry whispers around him. He rocked with a rhythm that would work on a spreadsheet but not a child. "Hey there," he whispered to Lily, voice breaking. "Daddy's got you. Please, baby. Please." Lily cried until the cry fell apart, and then she made that watery, gasping sound again like a hiccup on its side. He felt dizzy. He sank into his seat and held her upright, and she went stiff in his arms. Caleb stood up again. The woman with the knit hat touched his sleeve. "If you know something," she said softly, "try." He nodded, heart thudding. He slid past knees into the aisle. He walked, not fast, not slow, just steady, until the curtain was a handspan away. "Sir," a crewman said, stepping in front of him, "you need to return to your seat." "I can help," Caleb said, keeping his voice even. "I know how to calm a baby. Might just be the angle. Or pressure in her ears. I can. Please return to your seat." The crewman wasn't cruel. He was careful, bound by rules that kept everyone safe. But rules didn't know what to do with a cry like that. Dana reached the curtain, eyes moving from the crewman to Caleb. She thought of a time on a red eye when a grandmother had taught her a burping trick no manual ever mentioned. She thought of the pale lips she had just seen. She said to the crewman gently, "Let me try this." She turned to Caleb. "If the father allows it, you can talk him through it from the aisle. But you do not touch the child. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." They stepped into first class together. It was quiet there, but a tense quiet filled with expensive sighs. Grant's face was gray with worry. Dana knelt beside him. "Sir," she said, "this young man might have a calming technique to try. We can stay right here at your seat. You'll hold her. He'll talk you through it." Grant stared at the teen. He saw a boy in a cheap hoodie, not a doctor, not a nanny from a high-end agency, just a kid with wide, steady eyes. "Absolutely not," he said. "I don't need." Lily coughed again, a miserable sound, and her nose bubbled. Dana looked at the baby's chest and did not like what she saw. "Sir," she said, this time with more weight. "Please." Grant swallowed. Pride and fear had a small fight in his throat. Fear won. "Fine," he said, voice hoarse. "Talk." He kept his arms tight around Lily like the world might take her if he loosened his grip. Caleb took a small breath he hoped nobody noticed. He spoke slow. "Sir, can I ask you to sit her up more? Hold her against your chest, belly to chest, so her airway is open. Good. Now put your hand under her bottom, support the neck with your wrist, not your fingers. That's it. Breathe slow so she feels it. Not big breaths, steady ones." Grant did it, clumsy at first, then a little better. "She might have pressure in her ears," Caleb said. "If you're okay, you can try letting her suck on your clean knuckle. Wash with a wipe so she makes that chewing motion. Or a pacifier again. Sometimes that helps equalize." Dana handed a wipe. Grant did as told, shaky but willing. Lily rooted weakly, then turned her head away and made that small, wet cough again. "Okay," Caleb said, voice softer now, talking to the baby. "Hey Lily, you don't know me. I'm just a guy going to play some chess. But you don't have to fight so hard. We hear you." He looked at Grant. "Do you feel how she's stiff?" "Yes," Grant said, eyes wet. "Sometimes gentle pressure at her tummy can help gas move," Caleb said. "Like a slow bicycle motion with her legs. But very soft. I don't want to hurt her." "You won't. Slow, like you're drawing circles in the air." Grant watched Caleb's hands demonstrate nothingness, then copied the motion with Lily's tiny legs. The baby let out a small squeak that sounded a little like relief, a little like a complaint. A man across the aisle scoffed. "We've all got places to be," he said. "If the kid can't handle a baby, by the whole plane." Grant's jaw clenched. Caleb kept his eyes on the baby. "You're doing good, sir. Breathe with her. Let her borrow your calm." Grant tried. Calm felt far away. He dragged it closer. 2 rows back, a woman whispered, "Who is that boy?" Another replied, "No idea." But listen to him. The plane hit a mild bump. Drink shook. The seatbelt sign chimed on. The captain's voice came over the speaker, smooth and calm. "Folks, light chop ahead. Please take your seats." Dana frowned. "We've got to wrap this quickly," she said in a low voice. Caleb nodded. "Sir," he said, "one more thing we can try if you're okay. It looks silly but it works. Humming. Oh, not loud. Babies feel vibration. It tells them safe." Grant stared at him like he had suggested singing to the stock market. Then he looked at his daughter. He pressed his lips near her ear and hummed one long, low note. It sounded like a quiet engine on a calm day. For 3 seconds Lily paused. She made a tiny snuffle. Someone in first class actually smiled. Then her face pinched again and the cry returned, sharper. She coughed and then seemed to choke on air. Dana's hand moved toward the call button for medical assistance. Caleb's mind jumped to his mother's most desperate trick on a winter night when his sister wouldn't breathe right. Upright, open airway, slow back pats down the spine, not hard so the air moved. "Back pats," he said. "Downward. Gentle. Stop if she sounds worse." Grant shifted his hand, tried to follow, and Lily's little body made a scary shudder. The hum of the engines felt louder. Heads leaned in. Pride, patience, time, all of it thinned to a thread. Caleb felt the world squeeze tight. He wasn't supposed to be here, telling a rich stranger how to hold his child. He was supposed to be in seat 32A, eating a cold sandwich, drawing openings on a napkin. He looked at Lily's face, at the tiny birthmark by her ear, at the way babies fight with everything they have because that's all they know. He took one step closer, still not touching, and said softer, "You're okay, little one. "We've got you." He hummed too, low, steady. Dana didn't stop him. The baby's mouth closed for a heartbeat. Her chest stuttered. Then, right as relief began to tip toward them, the plane dropped into a sudden pocket of air. Trays rattled. Someone screamed. Dana grabbed the bulkhead. The crewman at the curtain reached for the interphone. Grant's eyes blew wide as Lily's head tipped back in the jolt and her cry cut off like a string snapped in two-dot silence. A bad kind. Dana hit the chime for medical help. The air turned thin. The man across the aisle stopped talking. Caleb's heart slammed so hard he saw sparks around the edges of his sight. "Sir," he said, voice tight but steady, "give her to me. No, wait, keep holding her, but listen. Tilt her slightly forward, support the jaw, open the airway. Now, light pats. Breathe. Breathe." Grant's hands shook too hard to be useful. He tried to do 3 things at once and did none of them well. He looked at Caleb like a man looks at a lifeguard when the ocean is bigger than pride. Dana made the call. "This is the purser. We have an infant in distress. Is there a doctor on board?" A ding, a pause that lasted forever. No one stood up. The jet rolled a little, then leveled. The seatbelt sign glowed like a warning, not just about seats but about everything. Caleb lowered his voice like he was talking to his sister in the dark. "Lily, hear me. Follow this." He drew a slow breath. 1 Mississippi, 2, 3. He did it again. He didn't touch her. He only let the sound live in the small space between them, a steady river in a loud world. Grant tried to match it. His shoulders shook. He steadied them. Lily's chest quivered. For a half breath, it rose, fell, rose again, then hitched and went still. "Move," someone hissed from behind Caleb. The crewman reached past him for the infant mask. Dana's hands were already there. Caleb's mind flashed to one last thing his mom had said for clogged noses. A tiny roll of tissue as a gentle wick, a quick clear so air could move. They didn't have that. But they had wipes. "Her nose," he said quickly. "Clear it, soft, soft, she might not be getting air." Dana slipped a corner of a sterile wipe and swiped, quick and precise. A tiny string of mucus lifted free. Lily made a sound like a sigh underwater. Grant's mouth opened like he had been holding his own breath for a year. His eyes flooded. "Come on, baby," he whispered. "Please." A door near the front snapped open. A woman with a neat bun and a calm face, she had been asleep with an eye mask, stepped forward. "I'm a pediatric nurse," she said, showing a badge. Relief rolled through the aisle like warm air, but it was too soon to relax. Lily's eyes fluttered. Her lips were still too pale. The nurse knelt, looked at the angle of Lily's head, the color of her nail beds, the rhythm or lack of one, the way Grant's hands were both strong and lost. She nodded once, like a person who knows she is walking into a storm but has walked into storms before. "All right," she said. "We're going to do this together." Dana handed her the infant mask. The nurse glanced at Caleb for half a second, as if she had felt the shape of his help in the air, then back to the baby. "Dad," she said to Grant, voice low and firm, "you're going to keep her upright against your chest." "Good. You," she pointed to Dana, "monitor O2 if you can." She set the tiny mask near Lily's face, not forcing it, letting air flow near, watching for panic. "And you," she said to Caleb, "whatever you were doing to keep Dad breathing, keep doing it." Caleb nodded. His knees went weak with relief and fear at once. He kept his breath steady, his voice soft, his eyes on the baby, his heart on the line. The engines hummed like a deep drum. The nurse watched, counted, adjusted. A minute stretched long. The cabin was a church of held breath. Then from Lily's small chest, a sound came, a tiny, shaky inhale. A faint pink returned to her lips like color coming back to the sky after a long night. The nurse's eyes didn't leave the baby's face. "There you go," she whispered. "Stay with me." The man across the aisle put down his phone. Someone else wiped tears they didn't expect. Grant leaned his forehead against his daughter's hat, shaking with silent thank yous he did not know how to say out loud. Caleb felt every muscle unclenched by 1 degree. He didn't smile. Not yet. He knew babies. He knew storms could build again. The captain's voice came back, still calm but closer now. "Folks, we've requested priority routing. Cabin crew, prepare to assist our medical volunteer." Dana nodded, already moving. The nurse looked up sharply. "No, don't move us unless she dips again," she said. "We're okay for this minute." Then she counted under her breath, checked the baby's chest, lifted her chin a hair and asked softly, "Lily, can you give me one more?" Lily gave them a small breath. Another. The tiny pink in her lips held. Caleb's eyes burned. He thought of his mom on a winter night, humming in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled like laundry soap and fried onions, saving a baby with love and a head tilt. He thought of a chessboard and how sometimes the best move wasn't a flashy one but a quiet shift that changed everything. "Who is your coach?" the knit hat woman whispered from the economy side of the curtain, like the boy had just played a perfect opening. Caleb almost laughed. "My mom," he whispered back. For 10 long seconds, everything was almost calm. The nurse nodded once. "All right," she said, eyes still on Lily. "We're stable for now." She glanced at Grant. "You did good, Dad." Grant swallowed hard. He looked at Caleb, words piled behind his teeth, none of them big enough. Then the plane hit another bump. Small. Quick. Enough to make Lily fuss. Her breath stuttered, not a stop but a stumble. The nurse steadied the mask. "Stay with me," she said again. Grant finally found a word and gave it to Caleb like a gift. "Please," he said, voice raw. "Don't go." Caleb nodded. "I'm not going anywhere." But the ocean was big, the night was long, and storms like to come in sets. Down the aisle, a man in a suit stood up and said something about rules and lawsuits and who was allowed where. He pointed at Caleb like a problem. The crewman lifted a hand as if to make the boy step back behind the curtain, away from the baby who had just borrowed his calm. Dana moved to block the man in the suit. The nurse kept her focus on Lily. The captain said something about turbulence. The seatbelt sign stayed on. The hum of the engines filled every space words could not. And then Lily's tiny face tightened once more. The pink in her lips wavered. The nurse's head snapped up an inch. Grant's grip tightened. Caleb took a breath, ready to give his calm away again, when a sharp chime rang over the ceiling and the intercom clicked with an urgent tone that made everyone freeze. The cabin was heavy with silence that wasn't peaceful at all. Lily's lips were pale, and her tiny chest stuttered between shallow breaths. The nurse leaned close, her eyes sharp, her voice calm. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Just stay." She adjusted the mask carefully, letting oxygen trickle near the baby's face, not forcing it, not scaring her further. Grant's arms trembled as he held his daughter, afraid one wrong move could break her. Caleb stood only a step away, still in the aisle, his backpack strap digging into his shoulder. He kept his breathing steady, humming faintly because the nurse told him, "Don't stop what you were doing." His low tone floated between them, like a quiet rope the baby could cling to. Then the intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We've declared a medical emergency. We are in contact with ground control for possible diversion. Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened." A ripple of whispers swept the cabin. First-class passengers, people used to power, control, and choice, were suddenly powerless in the sky. A man in a blazer muttered, "I'll miss my connection." A woman clutched her pearls. Someone prayed under their breath. Dana, the flight attendant, crouched near Grant. "Sir, how is she responding?" The nurse answered instead. Airway is open, but breathing is irregular. She needs monitoring." Grant swallowed. His face looked carved from stone and fear. "She can't die up here," he whispered, voice cracking. Caleb's chest squeezed. He thought of his sister's tiny fists waving in the night, his mom saying, "Babies fight hard, but they need us to fight harder." He wanted to reach out, but he remembered the rule, no touching. All he had was his voice. "Mr. Cole," Caleb said softly. Grant glanced at him, startled at being addressed by name, though no one had spoken it aloud. "I've read about you," Caleb explained quickly. "You built Coltech. Everyone knows." He took a breath. "But right now, you just need to be Lily's dad." Grant blinked. Nobody had ever told him to be just a dad. The nurse pressed 2 fingers against Lily's tiny wrist, counting silently. Then she looked up. "Her pulse is there. Weak but steady. Keep holding her upright." The plane jolted again, turbulence. A soda can roll down the aisle. Passengers gasped. Grant clutched Lily tighter, nearly panicking. "Slow," Caleb urged. "Don't tense. She feels everything. Let her feel calm, not fear." Grant tried. His arms loosened just enough for the baby to rest against him. Caleb hummed again, low and steady. After a long, unbearable pause, Lily let out a faint cry, not strong, not loud, but a cry. The sound was like rain after drought. Relief rippled through the rows. The nurse nodded. "That's good. That's very good." But it wasn't over. Caleb knew it. A baby that fragile wasn't safe yet. 2 hours earlier, before the plane reached the middle of the Atlantic, Grant had been rehearsing his London pitch in his head. The investors waiting for him didn't care about sleepless nights or crying babies. They wanted numbers, innovation, and certainty. He had built his empire by showing certainty, even when he didn't feel it. But sitting in row 1A, rocking a baby who wouldn't stop crying, certainty crumbled. He remembered his ex-wife's voice on the day she left. "You're married to your company, not me. You won't even hold your own child." He hadn't argued because deep down he knew she was right. And now here he was alone, holding Lily, failing her. "Sir," Dana said gently, "would you like me to take her for a walk down the aisle? Sometimes movement helps." Grant shook his head. "No. She needs me." The words surprised even him. Back in economy, Caleb had tried to distract himself with chess notes. But the cries cut through the paper. He remembered his little sister, Naomi, sick with a winter cold. He remembered his mom showing him how to rock her upright, how to pat her back in slow rhythms. He remembered Naomi quieting in his arms when nothing else worked. And now, seeing Grant's helplessness, Caleb couldn't ignore it. "Mr. Cole," the nurse said now, pulling him back to the moment. "She needs you steady. Watch her lips, colors improving. Keep the airway clear." Caleb spoke softly again. "Hum. Keep humming. She'll match you." Grant's humming was shaky at first, but it grew steadier. The vibration against his chest seemed to soothe Lily. She stirred, whimpered, then settled into a thin but steady breath. That a cheer didn't erupt, but a collective exhale swept the cabin. People unclenched fists, shoulders dropped, eyes softened. Even the man in the blazer lowered his phone. Grant's eyes filled. He looked at Caleb like he was seeing him for the first time, not as a kid from economy, but as the one person who knew what to do when he didn't. "Thank you," he whispered. Caleb shook his head. "Don't thank me. Just hold her." The nurse smiled faintly. "You've done more than you realize." But before calm could settle, the captain's voice returned. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for possible diversion to Shannon Airport in Ireland for medical assistance. Estimated arrival in 40 minutes. Grant's heart pounded. 40 minutes could feel like forever. Lily whimpered again, weaker this time. The nurse leaned closer. "Stay with me, sweetheart." Caleb's chest tightened. He thought of his tournament, his dreams, his future, but none of it mattered right now. He wasn't going to let this baby slip away. And just as he steadied himself for another round of humming and guiding, the seatbelt sign dinged, and the plane jolted sharply downward. Passengers screamed. Drink spilled. Lily's cry broke, then cut off again. Her lips turned pale. Her chest stilled. The nurse's face hardened. "She's not breathing." Gasps filled the cabin. Dana called for emergency equipment. Grant froze, terror locking his arms. "Move," the nurse barked. She took the baby, laid her gently across her arm, and began infant CPR motions. The plane rocked. Passengers cried out. Caleb's vision blurred, but he forced himself to stay calm. "You've got her," he whispered. "Come on, Lily. Fight." The nurse gave 2 tiny breaths, then compressions. Grant was weeping openly. Caleb kept humming, his tone steady as if willing life back into the child. Then a faint gasp. A shudder. Lily's chest rose once, twice. "She's back," the nurse breathed. The cabin erupted in relieved whispers. Some cried. Some prayed. Grant fell to his knees beside the seat, clutching Caleb's arm. "You saved her," he said hoarsely. Caleb shook his head again. "She saved herself. We just helped her breathe." But deep down he knew the fight wasn't over. 40 minutes to Ireland was a long time, and Lily was fragile. The captain's voice returned, urgent now. "Cabin crew, prepare for immediate descent. We are diverting." The engines roared. The plane tilted. Caleb gripped the seat, heart racing as alarms dinged overhead. And in the middle of chaos, Lily whimpered again. Small, weak, but alive. The plane tilted sharply and overhead compartments rattled. A glass clinked, then shattered somewhere near the galley. Gasps and cries rippled through the cabin as the captain's voice returned, firm but calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are diverting to Shannon Airport for an onboard medical emergency. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Crew, secure the cabin." Grant clutched Lily tighter against his chest, rocking her in desperation. His shirt was damp with sweat and tears, his suit jacket crumpled on the floor. He whispered into her tiny pink hat, "Stay with me, baby. Daddy's here. Please." His voice cracked, carrying the rawness of a man stripped of all his armor. The nurse remained crouched at his side, eyes scanning Lily's face for every flicker of breath. "Her chest is moving," she said, her voice steady but taut. "It's shallow, but it's there. Keep her upright. Keep her calm." She glanced at Dana. Oxygen flow steady? Yes, Dana replied, carefully adjusting the tiny mask's tubing as turbulence jolted her sideways. Caleb stood frozen a step back, gripping the bulkhead with white knuckles. His hoodie clung to his skin with sweat, but his face was calm. He knew one thing for certain. If he lost his calm, Grant would lose his too, and Lily would feel it. Babies always did. So he forced his voice into the same rhythm his mother had taught him years ago. You've got her, Mr. Cole. Don't rush. Don't panic. She's fighting, but she's still with us. Grant's eyes, bloodshot and wet, snapped up to meet Caleb's. Why you? He whispered like he couldn't believe it. Why does some kid know more about my daughter than I do? Caleb swallowed. He didn't have an answer that wouldn't wound the man further. But he said gently, because I had to. My sister needed me. And right now Lily needs you. The plane jolted again, sending a handbag sliding down the aisle. A baby in coach began to wail, startled by the sudden drop, and for a moment the sound overlapped with Lily's shallow whimpers. But Lily's was weaker, thinner. The contrast made Grant's heart seize with fear. The nurse checked Lily's pulse again. Her lips tightened. It's fading. We need to keep her stimulated. She reached into the medical kit and pulled out a tiny suction bulb. Her airway might be partially blocked again. Grant's hands shook as he passed Lily back into her steady grip. The nurse squeezed the bulb gently at Lily's nostril, then released. A faint trickle of mucus cleared, and Lily gasped weakly. Relief swelled in the cabin, passengers craning their necks to see. But before anyone could relax, the intercom crackled. Cabin crew, prepare for landing. We have 35 minutes to touchdown. 35 minutes. Caleb's stomach twisted. In a chess game, 35 moves could decide victory or disaster. But this wasn't a game. This was a baby's life, stretched across an ocean sky. Behind the curtain, economy passengers were buzzing with whispers. What's happening up there? Someone muttered. They said a baby stopped breathing, another replied. A woman crossed herself. A teenager pointed toward Caleb's empty seat. That kid went up there. He hasn't come back. The knit hat woman who had sat beside him leaned forward to see through the small gap in the curtain. She saw his hunched shoulders, his steady stance beside the millionaire's seat. He's helping, she whispered, almost proud, like she had known all along he would. Grant's mind spun like an engine without brakes. He thought of deals, meetings, negotiations. He thought of boardrooms filled with people who respected him, feared him, or needed him. None of it mattered now. His fortune, his empire, it couldn't buy Lily's next breath. His eyes dropped to Caleb again. The boy's face was calm, his voice steady. Why does he remind me of someone? Grant thought. Then it struck him. Caleb's eyes had the same fierce focus his own father used to have when teaching him how to ride a bike. Steady, patient, certain. A look Grant had forgotten, buried under years of ambition. Grant's throat burned. He had spent years running from his past, from the feeling of being small and helpless. And now his daughter was showing him what helplessness really meant. The nurse counted Lily's breaths aloud. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. Still irregular. Keep humming. Grant obeyed, pressing his lips close to Lily's ear. His hum was uneven at first, breaking with tears, but slowly it found rhythm. Caleb joined in, his tone lower, steady as a heartbeat. The sound filled the tense cabin like a thread weaving father, daughter, stranger, and sky together. Passengers leaned closer. Even those who had complained earlier were silent now. The man in the blazer shut his eyes, shame coloring his face. Come on, sweetheart, the nurse whispered. Stay with us. Lily stirred, eyelids fluttering. A faint pink returned to her cheeks. Her tiny chest lifted again, slightly stronger. Relief swept the row like sunlight breaking through clouds. She's stabilizing, the nurse said firmly. Good work. Keep it steady. Grant let out a sob, pressing his forehead against his daughter's tiny hat. He whispered, Don't ever leave me. Please don't ever leave me. But just as hope began to settle, the plane hit another pocket of air. It jolted downward, and oxygen tubing slipped free from the mask. The baby's cry cut off, her chest stuttering once more. Hold her steady, the nurse commanded. Dana scrambled to reconnect the tube, but the turbulence tossed her sideways. Caleb caught her arm, steadying her. Here, he said, grabbing the loose line. He clicked it back into place, his hands surprisingly sure. The hiss of oxygen returned. Lily gasped, whimpered, then cried weakly. Grant's knees buckled with relief. Oh God. Oh thank God. The nurse nodded sharply. She's fighting. Just a little longer. Time crawled. Each minute stretched like an hour. Grant hummed. Caleb hummed. The nurse counted. Dana held oxygen steady. Passengers sat in stunned silence. At 20 minutes to landing, the captain announced, "We've begun our descent. Cabin crew, prepare the cabin for arrival." The nurse's eyes stayed fixed on Lily. "She's stable but weak. We need ground medics ready the second we land." Grant whispered, "I can't lose her. Not her. She's all I have." Caleb's voice was steady. "You won't. She's tougher than she looks. Babies fight hard. Just don't stop believing in her." Grant looked at him, his face wet with tears. "How do you know that?" Caleb hesitated. His voice softened. "Because my little sister was born early. Doctors said she might not make it. But she fought. She fought harder than anyone. She's 8 now. And she's perfect." Grant blinked, stunned by the quiet power in the boy's words. He clutched Lily tighter. The wheels touched down with a screech, tires biting the runway. The cabin jolted. Gasps filled the air. Grant held Lily through it, praying silently. As the plane slowed, sirens wailed outside. Through the window, flashing red and white lights approached fast. The nurse exhaled. "We made it." But then Lily's chest hitched again, shallow and weak. "She's fading," the nurse said sharply. "We need medics now." The doors hissed open. Paramedics rushed aboard, carrying gear, their voices brisk and professional. The nurse handed Lily over, giving a rapid summary. 6-month-old, respiratory distress, multiple apneic episodes during flight, stabilized intermittently with oxygen. Grant staggered to his feet, trying to follow, but Dana held him back. "They'll move faster without you in the way. Please," Grant begged. "She's my daughter." Caleb stepped forward, placing a steady hand on Grant's arm. "She's in good hands. Don't lose your strength now. She needs you strong when you see her again." Grant's breath shook. Then he nodded, gripping Caleb's shoulder like it was a lifeline. The paramedics disappeared down the aisle with Lily. The plane felt suddenly too quiet. Grant turned to Caleb, his voice hoarse. "You saved her. You saved my little girl." Caleb shook his head. "We all did. The nurse, the crew. Even Lily herself." Grant's eyes glistened. "No. You stepped forward when no one else would." He swallowed. "I'll never forget this." But as the paramedics disappeared into the flashing lights outside, a new wave of dread hit Caleb. His chest tightened. The tournament, his future, his one chance. The plane wasn't going to London anymore. It had landed in Ireland. Cold night air rushed into the cabin when the aircraft door opened. The scent of jet fuel mixed with rain as flashing ambulance lights painted the runway in red and white. Paramedics moved quickly, their boots thudding against the jet bridge. Passengers leaned into the aisle, straining for a glimpse of the baby carried in careful arms. Lily's faint cries, muffled under an oxygen mask, were the only proof she was still with them. Grant stumbled after the medics, ignoring the protests of the crew. His expensive shoes slipped slightly on the damp surface, but he didn't care. "Wait, please, I'm her father," he cried. The nurse who had tended Lily pressed a reassuring hand to his shoulder. "They'll let you ride along. Stay calm. She needs you steady." Caleb lingered at the cabin door, heart pounding. Rain misted his hoodie, clinging to his hair. He should have been racing toward a different kind of stage. Bright lights, polished boards, a chess clock ticking in London. Instead, he was watching flashing sirens swallow a baby he had never met before today. A hand touched his arm. It was Dana, her uniform damp with sweat, her eyes soft. "You did well, Caleb," she whispered. "Most people freeze. You didn't." Caleb shook his head. "It's not enough. What if she doesn't make it?" Dana's voice was firm. "Then you'll know you did everything you could. That's more than most can say." At the foot of the stairs, Grant climbed into the ambulance, his hands trembling as he clutched Lily's blanket. The paramedics worked around him, attaching monitors, checking vitals. The nurse squeezed Caleb's shoulder before climbing in too. "Stay strong, young man. You're part of her fight now." The doors slammed shut, and the siren wailed into the night. The ambulance disappeared down the slick tarmac road, leaving the plane behind. Passengers began to disembark, muttering about missed connections, hotel vouchers, and delays. But Caleb stood frozen, staring after the ambulance lights until they vanished. His chest ached with conflict. Every second that ticked by was a second closer to forfeiting his match. "Son," Dana said gently, "you need to make a choice. Your tournament or this." Her words echoed like a clock's relentless tick point. 2 hours later, the terminal at Shannon Airport buzzed with stranded passengers. Some complained loudly at the service desk, demanding reroutes to London. Others dozed in chairs, their voices low. Rain lashed the tall windows, and the sound of distant thunder rolled across the Irish coast. Caleb sat alone near Gate 7, his backpack at his feet. His notebook, with its scrawled chess openings, lay open on his lap. But his eyes weren't on the pages. They were on the entrance doors, waiting, hoping. Then he saw him. Grant stumbled in, soaked from the rain, his tie gone, his shirt wrinkled. He looked nothing like the polished millionaire who had boarded hours earlier. His eyes scanned the terminal until they locked on Caleb. Without hesitation, he walked straight over. Caleb stood quickly. Is she? Grant's voice broke. She's alive. Stable. They admitted her to intensive care. The doctors said, if we'd waited longer, she might not have made it. Relief crashed through Caleb like a wave. His knees nearly gave out. Thank God, he whispered. Grant reached out, gripping Caleb's shoulders with trembling hands. You saved her life. Don't tell me no, he added quickly when Caleb opened his mouth. That hum, those instructions, you gave me the strength I didn't have. I'll never forget it. Caleb shifted uncomfortably. I just did what my mom taught me. Grant studied him for a moment, his jaw tightening. Where were you headed before this? Caleb glanced at his notebook, then back. London. International chess tournament. My first big one. Grant's brow furrowed. London? He glanced at the departure boards, half the flights delayed, some canceled. Your connection? Gone, Caleb admitted softly. I don't even know if I can still make it. The weight of his sacrifice settled between them. Outside, rain poured harder, streaking the glass. Caleb's stomach churned. He thought of his mother's voice, proud and hopeful when she hugged him goodbye. Make us proud, son. This is your chance. And now, because he stepped into a first-class crisis, that chance was slipping away. Grant followed his gaze, then clenched his jaw. No, he muttered. You're not missing this because you saved my daughter. Caleb blinked. Sir? Grant straightened, his posture regaining a shadow of his old authority. You're going to that tournament. If I have to charter a plane myself, you'll get there. Caleb shook his head. You don't have to. I do, Grant cut him off, his voice fierce. Because I owe you more than money can ever repay. You gave me back my daughter. His eyes softened, wet again. Let me give you back your dream. Minutes later, they were in a black car speeding through the Irish countryside toward Limerick, where Grant's private jet waited. Caleb sat in stunned silence as the rain-slicked roads flashed past. He clutched the plastic chess knight his mother had given him, his thumb rubbing its smooth surface. Grant spoke quietly, almost to himself. I thought money could solve everything. Tonight I learned it can't. But you, Caleb, you reminded me what really matters. Caleb looked at him. Family? Grant nodded. Yes, family. And courage. He glanced sideways. Do you know I almost pushed you away? I almost let my pride kill her. But you wouldn't give up. Caleb stared out the window, the weight of it pressing into his chest. I couldn't. She reminded me of my sister. I just knew I had to try. Grant's voice cracked. And you did more than try. You gave her another chance. When they arrived at the airfield, the jet engines were already humming. A crew waited, umbrellas raised against the pounding rain. Grant motioned Caleb forward. Go. Play your match. And win it, for Lily. Caleb hesitated. But your daughter? She's in good hands now, Grant said firmly. And I'll be at her side the moment I leave here. But you belong out there. Caleb nodded slowly, heart pounding. I won't waste this chance. As the jet soared into the night sky, Caleb sat by the window, notebook open, the little chess knight resting on his palm. His stomach twisted with nerves. Tomorrow, the greatest test of his young life awaited. But for now, his thoughts kept drifting back, to a baby's pale lips, a father's desperate eyes, and the night he discovered courage wasn't about titles, money, or fame. It was about stepping forward when no one else would. The engines roared louder, carrying him closer to London. But in his heart, he knew this was only the beginning. Because some battles are fought on a board of 64 squares. And some battles are fought in the silence between a baby's breaths. Just as he closed his notebook, a sudden voice came over the jet's intercom. Caleb Brooks. He blinked, startled. Yes. Message for you, sir, the attendant said, handing him a folded note. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. It was from Grant. Win this. Not just for yourself. For Lily. For everyone who needs to believe that miracles still happen in the sky. Caleb closed his eyes, holding the note tight. Tomorrow's game had just become more than a tournament. It was a promise. But as the jet sliced through storm clouds toward London, lightning flashed outside the window, bright, blinding, dangerous. The cabin shuddered. Caleb's heart leapt. The storm wasn't done with him yet. Rain lashed against the private jet's windows as lightning flashed across the Atlantic sky. The engines roared, fighting turbulence that tossed the cabin like a toy boat. Caleb gripped the armrest with one hand, his mother's tiny plastic chess knight clutched in the other. His heart thudded so loud he thought the crew could hear it. The storm outside felt like the storm in his chest. He had faced opponents before, school kids, local champions, online blitz players who typed insults in chat when they lost. But tomorrow he would face the best in the world. And he was flying into London not just for himself anymore. He carried the weight of a millionaire's whispered plea, a nurse's steady eyes, and a baby girl's fragile fight for life. When the jet finally broke through clouds, the city lights of London shimmered below like a giant chessboard. Caleb pressed his forehead to the cold window, whispering to himself, one step at a time. One move at a time. At the hospital in Limerick, Grant sat by Lily's bedside, his expensive watch ticking too fast for comfort. Wires and monitors surrounded his daughter, but her breathing was steadier now, her chest rising and falling with fragile determination. He stroked her tiny hand, guilt and love twisting inside him. A nurse entered quietly. She's improving, Mr. Cole. You should rest. Grant shook his head. Not until she's safe. His eyes burned with exhaustion. He remembered the boy's calm voice on the plane. Don't lose your strength now. She needs you strong when you see her again. 4 years he had measured strength in dollars, contracts, and headlines. Tonight, he learned strength was just showing up, humming when your voice cracked, and not letting go when you wanted to collapse. Grant kissed Lily's forehead. I promise, baby girl. No deal, no company, no world is more important than you. By dawn, Caleb was in London. He stepped off the jet with red eyes, wrinkled clothes, and trembling hands, but with a fire inside him stronger than anything before. A car took him straight to the tournament hall. An old theater turned into a cathedral of chess. Marble columns loomed, banners fluttered, and TV cameras lined the aisles. The announcer's voice echoed, representing the United States, Caleb Brooks. The crowd murmured, curious. Who was this kid with no sponsor logo on his jacket, no polished suitcase, just a thrift store hoodie and determination in his eyes? Caleb sat at the board, his opponent already waiting. Viktor Ivanov, the Russian prodigy known for crushing openings. His stare was cold, confident, almost bored. The clock ticked. Caleb took a breath, touched the knight in his pocket, and pushed his pawn to e4. The game began. Move after move, tension built. Cameras zoomed in, commentators whispered about the unknown American holding his ground against a giant. Caleb's mind raced, but he forced it to slow, to breathe. He remembered his mother's words, babies copy your calm. So do games. Don't rush. Don't panic. Let the board feel your steadiness. Viktor smirked after a particularly sharp move. Caleb stared at the pieces, his heart pounding, then smiled faintly. He saw it, the trap. A move his late night studying in laundromats had prepared him for. His hand moved with certainty. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The commentators leaned forward. Brilliant counter, one exclaimed. The boy found a line most grandmasters miss under pressure. Viktor's smirk vanished. He leaned in, studying the board, but the damage was done. Caleb's calm, like his humming on the plane, had shifted the fight. Piece by piece, move by move, Caleb dismantled the prodigy's attack. And when Viktor's clock ticked down to 0, the hall erupted. Caleb Brooks, unknown, unsponsored, 17 years old, had won his first international match. Back in Ireland, Grant's phone buzzed with alerts. His staff sent frantic messages. Your flight? Your investors? The press. He ignored them all. Instead, he opened a live stream link Dana had forwarded. On screen, the boy who had saved his daughter sat at a chessboard, victorious, the crowd chanting his name. Grant's throat closed. He whispered to the sleeping Lily, that's him. That's the boy who gave you another breath. And now he's winning battles on a different board. He pressed his forehead against hers. Someday I'll tell you this story. And I'll tell you to be brave like Caleb Brooks. After the match, Caleb stepped outside the theater into cool London air. The streets glistened with last night's rain. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. He opened it. It was a photo, Lily in a hospital crib, her cheeks pinker, her tiny hand wrapped around her father's finger. The caption read, she's breathing on her own now. Because of you. Caleb's eyes blurred with tears he didn't bother hiding. For the first time, he believed what people had been telling him all day, that he had done something extraordinary. 2 weeks later, Caleb sat in a hospital waiting room in Limerick, notebook on his lap. His tournament wasn't over. Sponsors were calling, journalists were chasing him, but he had come back. He needed to see her. The door opened. Grant stepped out, looking healthier, calmer, transformed. "She's awake," he said softly. Caleb followed him in. Lily lay in her crib, no wires this time, only a soft blanket and curious eyes. She gurgled faintly when she saw him, her tiny hand reaching out. Caleb leaned closer, smiling. "Hey, little fighter." He hummed a low note, the same hum from the plane. Lily cooed, calming instantly. Grant swallowed hard. "She remembers you." Caleb looked up. "Babies remember calm. It stays with them." Grant's voice cracked. "So will I. For the rest of my life." He stepped closer, eyes shining. "I've made fortunes, Caleb. But tonight, I realize the greatest fortune I'll ever have is her. And I'll never forget that it was a poor boy from Chicago who reminded me." He extended his hand, firm and full of gratitude. "Thank you. For everything." Caleb shook it, his own eyes wet. "Take care of her. That's all I ask." The story spread. Not just about the millionaire's baby who almost died on a plane, but about the teenager who stepped forward when no one else did. Headlines called him the boy who calmed the sky. Sponsors rushed to sign him, but Caleb stayed grounded. He called his mom every night, and every time she said the same thing: "I'm proud of you, son." Grant visited often, sometimes watching Caleb's games online, sometimes inviting him to dinners where Lily giggled in her high chair. They were from different worlds, one from skyscrapers, one from the South Side, but they shared a bond written in survival, breath, and courage. Months later, at another tournament, Caleb looked across the board at a new opponent. The crowd buzzed with excitement. Cameras flashed. He took a deep breath, pulled the tiny knight from his pocket, and set it beside the board. Some battles are fought with money, some with pride, and some, like the one that saved Lily, are fought with nothing but courage and calm. And when Caleb pushed his pawn forward, he knew one thing for certain. The greatest victories aren't the ones the world applauds. They're the ones that save a single fragile breath in the middle of a storm. Subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Thank you for being here. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments and I'll shout you out in the next episode. C tier. If you were Caleb, would you risk your dream for a stranger's life, or trust someone else to step forward?